Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video, and I'm finally doing it. A bear versus tiger video. Like every animal versus channel does this. Most of them do a terrible job at it, very surface level. But hey, I am doing my own analysis of this. Like I'm throwing my hat in the ring, I guess. So before I start my analysis, I would like to make 2 points very clear. First of all, if you consider this or this as a successful predation attempt by this evidence, you will have to consider this and this as successful predation event as well. You cannot just say that these ones are like successful predation attempts and these ones are scavenging. Either all of them are scavenging or none of them are. You cannot just pick and choose here. So in this video I would say all of them are scavenging, but if you believe that none of them are scavenging, all of them are predation, good on you, nothing against you, we can debate, totally fine. But for the context of this video, I'm mostly taking video evidence as the basis for reality, or feats as you can call it. Anyways, the second disclaimer I have is definitely go check out this playlist with the 4 videos, because a lot of the topics I mention in this video are discussed in way more detail in these videos. So if you find anything confusing, feel free to go there. I hope the context will clear up. I hope you don't find anything confusing, because I'm not talking about rocket science here. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. So firstly, let's look at the ecological niches. Let's look at our contenders, who they really are. So tigers are solitary hypercarnivore apex predators of the forest, and they specialize into bringing down giant herbivore mammals. Well, mostly mammals. Sometimes they do hunt reptiles and birds, but for the most part they go after mammals. On the other hand, bears are generalist, omnivore, scavenger, opportunist kind of animals, which are optimized for survival in different situations and for long periods of time without food. They eat pretty much everything. They eat berries, they eat grass, they eat salmon, they eat other type of fish. They also eat like carrion, as well as occasionally smaller mammals as well. So they're kind of opportunistic in that regards. So from the get-go we can see that they are very different animals in terms of their ecological niches. So it stands to reason that their bodies also evolved differently to do different tasks. And this is the first misconception I want to address before analysis, or during my analysis I guess, is a bear is not a scaled up tiger. Their bodies are fundamentally different. So just because a bear is bigger doesn't mean it's a scaled up tiger. They are fundamentally very different animals internally as well. So because bears are mainly designed or evolved, whatever you want to believe, are primarily evolved to live in harsh conditions. So essentially for long periods of time they want to survive without food. That's the main thing about bears. They can survive for very long without food or water. And due to this, they have a very bulky, heavy frame with a lot of fat. Bears are not packed with muscle, they are packed with fat. Anyone who's a hunter will tell you that bears are one of the fattiest animals out there. Like, that's one of the things they get out of bears, by the way. Like, they do get the, skin and stuff, but the main thing they get out of bear is bear glaze, which is a type of fat. And bears have lots of fat. Not a lot of muscle, but lots of fat. They have a lot of fat in the belly area, in the shoulder hump, in the hindquarters, not as much in the neck or the head area, but the rest of the body is very fatty. Even under the skin there is a lot of fat. In contrast, tigers have almost little to no body fat. They have mostly muscle and bones, and that's about it, and some skin, obviously. They have loose skin on their bodies, but from the get-go you can see that they're built very differently from each other, where bear is more heavy and powerful, where it's slower, like it's sluggish in a degree, whereas the tiger is more lean and agile, and it's way more flexible due to the feline bone structure. So already we can see that they are quite different. So now let's look at their stats. Firstly, let's look at size. It's no surprise that bears are bigger, okay? Bears take the win here. The biggest confirmed Siberian tiger, and I think the biggest Bengal tiger as well, is 315 kilogram in the wild. By the way, there are much heavier cats in the captivity, but they are obese, they are not healthy. In the wild it is 315 kilogram ones. That's the biggest one, confirmed at least. Similarly, for brown bear, the biggest ones are around 600 kilograms. There are reports of brown bears growing above 600 kilograms, but those are not confirmed or verified reports, mostly hunters sometimes exaggerating how big their kills were. Similarly, with polar bears, the biggest ones are like 700 kilograms, reliable ones, but there are obviously reports about the bigger ones, like the extreme examples, so those are also not reliable. Like, all three of these animals have extreme examples of, estimates. Like, there are estimates of 450 kilogram tigers out there, but again, exaggerated hunter tales. Same with like the 900 kilogram brown bear or the 1000 kilogram polar bear. All of these are over exaggerated estimates of the animal by the hunters that were hunting them. So even without all of that, still it's kind of obvious that the polar bear and the brown bear both are heavier than the tiger, so they take the edge in size. What about strength? Just because something is bigger doesn't necessarily mean that they are stronger. So in this case, because they have very different anatomy that is more prominent, tigers are mostly muscle, as I mentioned. They're up to 55% muscle. So because they don't have body fat that much, they don't have to move much weight when they are moving themselves, because the muscles are only pulling their own weight, and obviously the weight of bones and organs, but bones are somewhat heavy, but other than organs don't take up that much of the weight. So you can obviously see here that most of it is muscle, and that is why, because they don't have to pull much weight on them, they can use that at explosive power. And most of this muscle that they have is fast twitch muscle, which means they can use immense power for a very short duration. And on the other hand, the bears, they have around 30% muscle, but even less for the most part. Most of their weight is actually fat. Like during hibernation season, when they're at their largest, when you get the 600 kilogram estimates, they are almost doubling in size when they're hibernating than their default sizes, because it's all fat. They just accumulate tons and tons of fat by eating different things, and the metabolism is actually like that things get turned into fat first, proteins later, because again, that's how they are built. They need to survive the cold winter. Now again, in this particular video I mostly focus on brown bears because those are more commonly in contact with tigers because they live in Siberia and all that, but this can also be extrapolated to any other bear species, because all bear species have a lot of fat. Like, yes, not all bear species hibernate, but even the ones that do not hibernate can go for very long periods without food, and due to that they have those adaptations of storing fat in their body in huge amounts. So that is why they have less muscle pulling this additional weight of the fat, due to which they become a bit sluggish. Their strikes aren't as fast. their rearing up or pushing isn't as fast. However, because they are so big and heavy, they have a lot of inertia. So when they once take speed, they can hit with a lot of inertia or force to push something away. On the other hand, tigers have quick acceleration. Because they don't have much fat, they can accelerate from their 0 to top speed at very quickly. So during a collision, or you can also extrapolate this to when they're swiping their paws. So the strike damage, whenever you strike something, the damage is actually caused by the transfer of kinetic energy, whereas the, you can say, movement of that thing is caused by the transfer of inertia, like moment inertia, or motion inertia transferred into the other object. A good example of this is when you are hitting a ball with a bat. Okay, when you're playing cricket or some other game where you are hitting a ball with a stick. So how much damage will the ball take would depend on how much kinetic energy you are applying in the strike, whereas how far the ball would move would actually depend on the inertia. So two things are different. Kinetic energy is actually dependent more on velocity than mass. So the formula for kinetic energy is half mv square. So it's dependent on mass and v squared, the square of velocity, which means if mass doubles, kinetic energy doubles. But if velocity doubles, kinetic energy quintuples. So 4 times. So already you can see that with a little change in velocity, the kinetic energy that is being transferred becomes incredibly great. And that is why the swipes from a tiger's paw actually deals more damage. Not only because of the claws, I will get to the claws later, but because they move so fast, they transfer more kinetic energy. On the other hand, the bear's paws don't move as much, not move as fast either. So however, what they do have is mass behind them. Their paws or their limbs are much heavier than the tiger's. So they have way more inertia, hence they can move something by hitting them. So already you can see that they have two different types of strength. The best example I can give from real life comparison basis is an MMA fighter versus a sumo wrestler. MMA fighters are the low body fat, high striking, and good grappling fighters. On the other hand, sumo wrestlers are the big, heavy, bulky. By the way, don't confuse sumo wrestler for strongmen. Strongmen have similar body type to MMA fighters with very less body fat. Most of it is muscle. On the other hand, sumo wrestlers are more like, a very fat sumo wrestler because they have tons of fat. And you can see them, they have folds upon folds of fat, similar to a bear. And what they can do is they can push really hard. Because they have so much momentum with their mass and so much inertia, they can shove something away. So if it is a competition of who can hit the hardest or who can grapple the best, the tiger takes it. Whereas if it is who can push the hardest, the bear takes it. In a fight, striking and grappling is way more important than pushing something away. Because pushing something away is useful when you're trying to move inanimate objects, like you're trying to move a log, or you're trying to move a carcass, or you're trying to move a rock. Then it's useful because once that inertia is overcome, like once the bear pushes the rock out of its static position, it's not that difficult to move it the rest of the way. The main thing is about inertia. That is not the case when it's against a live animal that is constantly resisting, because that's when the bear runs into trouble. And I will show some examples of this where the bear's strength are so renowned. Like people talk about, oh, bears are so strong, they can, strike a moose on the back and the moose would die, or something like that. Just look at this, by the way. Just simply look at this. This is a calf, by the way, not even a fully grown bison, and this bear has absolutely zero chance of doing any damage to it neither is this bear able to pin this thing down. The whole video is like 5 minutes. I will put the link in the description if you guys want to go and check it out. But even after like 5.5 minutes of attacking this little calf of a buffalo, or bison in this case, the bear didn't manage to kill it. And this is a calf, by the way, against a fully grown bear. And now let's look at this example, for instance. Look at the tiger's speed, look at the ferocity, look at the strength. It grabbed this thing and then essentially snapped the neck of this buffalo in front of the other buffaloes and used the body of the dead buffalo as a defensive barrier to save itself. Like, the strength difference is on a whole different level. Now some might argue, oh, but a adult bison is more powerful than a Indian forest buffalo. True, not a calf. An adult Indian buffalo is way bigger than that calf you just saw. So it's not even a competition when it comes to strength in combat. Bears are good at, you know, moving inanimate objects, but against something that constantly struggles, they simply cannot hold on to it and use their so renowned strength that can break the back of a moose to pin that thing down. Their strength isn't the way people describe it. It's not as strong in fights. It's mostly to move inanimate objects. On the other hand, tiger strength is mainly to grapple and latch onto things. Their muscles are designed for it. They have way more muscles for their whole body. And due to this, they can essentially pin down and kill much bigger prey animals. Now, it's a tie then. One, the size, the bear takes it. The strength, the tiger takes it. Let's look at the other one. Defenses, or essentially armor, you can say. Well, bears have thick skin with a lot of thick fur and some fat underneath as well. So due to this, they are very much resistant to slashing damage, because fur is very resistant to slashes. I describe it further in my animal armor video in that playlist, so go check it out, where I explain why fur is so good against slashing. However, what fur is not good against is piercing and obviously blunt force. So that would come into play later. Anyways, in the case of tiger, they do have somewhat of a thick skin and some fur, but nowhere near as much fur as the bear to keep the animal nimble. So I guess defenses go to bear, 2-1. Now let's look at weaponry, because in the fight weapons are important. Okay, and both tigers and bears use their mouths to bite as their primary weapon, and the bites are quite different. I explained the different types of bites that exist in Animal Kingdom in my other video. Go check it out. But the long and short of it is that tiger bites are more focused on piercing. The deeper the penetration, the more the damage. This is why they have asymmetrical teeth. So their canines are much too big compared to their incisors or the remaining of their teeth. They have long pointed canines for piercing damage, which is great against animals that have a lot of fur. On the other hand, the bears have more stubby teeth because they have a crushing bite force. They have a crushing damage, which is great against bones. So which one is the advantageous one here? Well, there are no animals out there, which has, at least no mammals out there, with exposed bones. Okay, so in order to do damage to the bones, the bear still needs to get past the squishy muscles and the skin. And this is where the bear runs into trouble, because while their crushing bite is pretty good against bones, their crushing bite with low penetration is actually terrible against skin and flesh, because all it ends up doing is pinching really hard with very little to no penetration. And this is why, unless the bear gets a good grip on the tiger's leg or any other limb, and then it needs to bite for a while, because crushing bites are slow and takes a while to crack bones. Unless it is able to do that, it's not gonna be doing a lot of damage. In contrast, the tiger's piercing bite is great against tissue. It is great against piercing fur, it is great against piercing skin, and it is great at piercing muscle or any other soft tissue, dealing massive amounts of damage. Not only this, also the tiger's precision of biting matters here a lot. Tigers usually target internal organs that are important to an animal. So usually their primary target is the spine. Tigers bite on top of the spine because their teeth are so long, the canines, they can go between the vertebrae and sever them. They do this to massive animals like gores as well. Gores can grow up to 1500 kilograms. And the fact that tigers are able to bite through their spine is insane, which means that the tiger is able to bite through the spine of any animal that size. They don't actually bite through the vertebrae, they actually bite between the vertebrae. So their teeth slip between the vertebrae and essentially sever the spinal cord, which is the squishy bit that runs through the vertebrae. And due to this, the animal dies very quickly, because if your spinal cord is gone or compromised, you will be paralyzed and you won't be able to breathe anymore and you will die. So that's the method tigers use to kill, and obviously you can see which one deals more damage here, because against both of them are animals with soft squishy tissue on top of the bones, because they're vertebrates, mammals. So the bear's bite is not really gonna do much unless the bear somehow manages to grab the hind leg or the front leg by the mouth. But even then there will be other host of problems with that, because again it needs to get a really good grip. Most of the bite force is on the anterior part, like on the backside, on the molars, so most bites would not be there, and at the same time it's a moving animal, so it's gonna try to defend itself. So on the other hand, the tiger can actually latch itself on the prey, and once it bites the spine, if the bear struggles, it's actually great for the tiger, because once the spine is bitten, if the bear moves, it will essentially snap on itself and break the spine with the movement. So again, in this case, I have to give the edge to the tiger in the primary weapon. But this is not the only weapon they have. They also have a secondary weapon, which is the claw morphology, or in general, claws. Both of them have claws, but they're very different claws. Tiger claws are very much like meat hooks. They help the animal anchor themselves either onto trees or sometimes onto prey. They are very sharp, they are curved, and they are, you can say, retractable. So they're kept sharp, because usually they don't take their claws out until it's needed. So that way they remain very sharp, and because of the shape of them, they're very hooked, and the point is always facing the inside of an animal. So when they strike, these claws penetrate, puncture the skin. Essentially they do piercing, not slashing. A common misconception about claws is that most of them do slashing, which is not the case. Most type of claws actually do piercing. They are hooks. Are there examples of claws that do slashing? Yes. For example, Therizinosaurus claws, which were designed for slashing. On the other hand, tiger claws are designed for grabbing, essentially impaling and hooking. Their claws literally looks like meat hooks. So that's their claw. On the other hand, for the bear, the claws are different. The claws are straight, they're thicker, they are somewhat dull, and they're forward pointed, and obviously non-retractable. So they are constantly rubbing against the ground. It doesn't help that the bear also digs a lot. Bears are very good diggers. They dig to find roots and bugs and other things like that. So due to this, their claws are quite dull, and they are more equivalent to a pickaxe, whereas the tiger's one is more equivalent to a curved steak knife or a curved meat hook essentially. So when you compare these, obviously the tiger takes the edge. Now someone might say the bear's paw is bigger. Yes, it's bigger, it's distributing whatever force being applied to a greater surface area, which will help move an animal but won't do as much damage. It's the same thing with, being hit with a, tennis racket versus being hit with a stick of similar mass. The tigers, because they have smaller paws with greater acceleration, they can strike with way more force, way more kinetic energy, and it's focused on a much smaller area. Not to mention, usually it's focused at the tip of their claws, which dig deep into most animals. And even without that, the simple striking force is so much higher and so concentrated, it deals way more damage than the massive soft paws of the bear. Now granted, with a strike a bear can move more weight, so they can push a tiger aside with this strike, but it won't do as much damage as the tiger striking the bear with their paws, which are optimized to do damage. So in this case I have to give it to the tiger again. In both primary and secondary weaponry, tiger takes the edge. But we will also see this play into action in an example. Again, I have to show you this example of bears. Look at the bear. It's continuously biting on the bison with very little damage. On the other hand, the claws are also not very optimized to get a good grip and pin this creature down. Now, when you contrast this with a tiger, look at what it's hunting. It's hunting the largest bovine on the planet, the gaur. And in this case, the male is hunting a bull. And you will see just how devastating the piercing bite is. Because it's targeted towards internal organs, the canines of the tiger has pierced the throat of this gaur and essentially crushed the larynx. Remember, this is an animal nearly twice, if not 3 times the size of a bear. And the tiger is able to crush the larynx of this animal with a single bite. So yes, obviously the tiger takes the advantage in this case. What about agility? Well, this is no surprise. Tiger, being a big cat, is way more agile than any other animal of similar or bigger weight class. In fact, tiger is more agile than a lot of animals that are smaller than them. For example, like deer. They are extremely agile due to these fast twitch muscles, which can accelerate them really quickly. In contrast, bears, which have slow twitch muscles, which take very long time to get their strength. On the other hand, the bears have very limited agility. Like, in terms of agility feats, bears struggle to catch salmon that are already half dead, because again, salmon start to rot when they're swimming upriver, so they're half dead. They're swimming in like upriver, so against the water, and they're swimming in like ankle deep water, the fish, and still bears fumble it most of the time. On the other hand, polar bears, they're slightly better with agility, but they're still nowhere near the level of big cats. Polar bears run after seals and still struggle to catch them on ice. Remember, this is a seal we are talking about, an animal that humans can run up and catch, but somehow polar bears struggle with it. So when it comes to agility and acceleration, the edge goes to a big cat. Like, just look at this example. Simply look at this example, okay? This fish, this salmon, is jumping at the face of the bear, and look at the bear miss it. It's slow motion, obviously. Like, the salmon cannot change trajectory. It's just the bear is not agile enough to grab that thing. Now contrast that with this. Look at this hunt, by the way. Look how agile the tiger will be. These are axis deer, by the way, some of the fastest, most agile deer out there. Like, any hunter who hunted them will tell you they are one of the most agile, most quick to move deer. Not the fastest, like in the sense like gazelle and stuff, but then they are antelope, they're not true deer. But in terms of true deer, they are one of the fastest animals out there. And you will see how quickly they will get hunted. Look at the tiger. It grabbed the deer mid-run, avoided the antlers, and bit on the throat while the deer was running. This level of agility is on a whole different level. Obviously the antler broke afterwards, but yeah, that's how agile this creature is. Agility goes to the tiger. Now let's look at some of their mental stats, right, or other auxiliary stats. Firstly, intimidation. Now both of these are very intimidating creatures to humans, but what about to each other? Well, bears have one of the very intimidating moves of rearing up, and they have a very strong roar as well, which they often use to appear bigger and intimidate smaller animals like wolves, coyotes, pumas, and bobcats, etc. On the other hand, the tiger has a very powerful roar as well, which they use to keep other predators at bay and sometimes even scare off other herbivores when they're trying to defend their buddy. Because herbivores live in herds, and whenever they're trying to defend, tigers sometimes use their roar for a quick intimidation that often stuns the herbivore, giving the tiger enough opportunity to get away after he has already killed one of them. I explained this more in the video where I talk about how ambush works, how ambush doesn't necessarily make the animal stronger. It is mainly to prevent the animal from, prevent the prey animal from running away. But anyways, another thing, rearing up on hind legs is not exclusive to bears. First of all, tigers can also rear up on hind legs, but not as good as bears. And secondly, it gives them an intimidation advantage. It doesn't make them invulnerable. Some people think because bears can stand on two legs, suddenly their head and throat is completely out of the reach of an animal that can leap 16 feet in the air. Tigers can leap, okay? They can leap on top of an elephant. So the bear standing up, the head and the shoulder of the bear would probably be somewhere like 8 foot or 9 foot tall. The tiger has no problem reaching that. They can leap 16 feet. Not to mention the tiger itself standing up is 8 to 9 feet. So that's also something where the leaping does not give any significant advantage. Instead, it's mostly an intimidation. But because they're both very intimidating creatures, like tigers have this booming roar that is even said to paralyze certain animals because it has a resonating frequency that is the same as the bone joints. So it can sometimes not freeze but make other animals physically uneasy. Even if they're not intimidated by the loud sounds, they're physically at unease because of this roar. This is an infrasonic roar, so we can't hear it, but we can feel it when a tiger is in front of you. And due to that, I think it's a tie. Like, in terms of intimidation, it should be a tie. Both of them are at the top of their respective food chains, and they both can intimidate other animals. So in terms of intimidation, it's a tie. Now, what about stamina? And it's no surprise that tigers have fast twitch fibers, which are great for explosive powers but not great for stamina. So it's more like jet fuel, which is like really fast, really good acceleration, really powerful, but cannot go for very long. So tigers don't have too much stamina. On the other hand, bears, while they cannot accelerate as fast, nor are they as strong, they have a lot of stamina. So they can go on fighting for a very long time. So in this particular case, the bear takes the edge in terms of stamina. Now, what about experience, hunting experience, or in general combative experience? Well, tigers hunt very regularly. They are apex carnivores, they are obligate carnivores, so they have to hunt. And because they don't go hibernation or something, they have to hunt year-round, first of all, and they have to make a kill every 6 to 10 days in order to feed themselves, which means they have immense hunting experience by the time they reach maturity. Now, some bears do hunt more than others, like for example polar bears.
they do hunt more than the brown bears, but even then polar bears don't hunt as often as tigers. Polar bears hunt a lot more rarely because they can go for very long without food, and if the place where they live there aren't as many animals to hunt, to be honest, on land at least, and because it's a land carnivore mostly it hunts on land. So due to that, polar bears very rarely manage to hunt animals as frequently as tigers. This is why polar bears actually have a lot of fat, because they need to go for very long durations without, like, between the kills. So they have some hunting experience, not too much though. So medium level of hunting experience. On the other hand, brown bears, they very rarely hunt anything other than salmon. They mostly rely on salmon for protein, the occasional carcass, but like from other predators, the occasional scavenging, but that's about it. It's quite rare to find bears hunting large, like other large animals, especially the size of a tiger. Most of the times they eat like deer fawns, like small deers and stuff, which are not fully developed, and that's about it. So bears have quite low hunting experience, or in general combat experience, and intraspecies combat is not really a great basis because all three of them do fight each other, like their own species, all the time. Tigers do kill each other. Like, other than human poaching, the main leading cause of tiger deaths is actually other tigers. Male tigers all the time fight to the death, because especially if they are evenly matched, the fights can go on for very long and eventual deaths. Same goes with brown bears. Same goes with polar bears as well. So again, all animals have experienced fighting their own species, like all large predators. So it's not really a point there. But the only basis we have is hunting experience, and at the same time, tigers hunt much bigger and dangerous prey than both of these. Like, tigers hunt gores, tigers hunt buffaloes, tigers even hunt, on occasions, in rare occasions, like rhinos and elephants as well. Meanwhile, bears, like brown bears, very rarely hunt something like that. Polar bears on occasion hunt some seals, but seals are nowhere near as dangerous, and even if you assume they hunt belugas sometimes, which again there's no solid evidence of it, belugas are not dangerous. Like, they don't have anything to fight back with. It just has like a soft squishy blobby head, and that's it. So any predator with enough teeth and claws can pretty easily kill a beluga. And on the other hand, in terms of walruses, very rarely will you see polar bears attack walruses, and almost never succeed. They do hunt pups though, so granted, there is something. But on the other hand, brown bears, very rarely they hunt large animals. It's super rare. The myths about them breaking the back of moose is quite rare. Doesn't mean they never hunt moose. There are instances of them hunting juvenile moose and female moose, but not adult males, obviously. But yeah, there's that. So experience definitely goes in favor of tigers. What about intelligence? Well, this is quite complicated, and I would highly recommend you check out my video about the intelligence of different animals, where I discuss that there are different types of strengths and different type of intelligences as well. So in this particular case, because they are from two different ecological niches, they have two different type of intelligences. Tigers have very predatory intelligence, so they have intelligence that aids in killing other animals. They can look at an animal and figure out the weak spots of an animal much quicker. They can even sense if an animal has injury by simply looking at it, and even if it is not obviously visible, still a tiger can figure out where an animal is injured or how best to bring one animal down. So definitely when it comes to killing, the tiger is really, really good, and obviously experience helps with this. On the other hand, bears are generalist problem solvers. So it's generalist, so they can deal with difficult situation in more innovative ways. And on the other hand, tigers are smart enough to mimic voices to lure their prey, including, by the way, bears. Tigers do hunt bears, other species of bears, usually smaller black bears, but occasionally Eurasian brown bears as well. And the way they do it is they hide behind something. They mimic the calls of different animals, like usually the mating calls of animals, and when the animal comes up to thinking that they will get laid, they get laid to rest permanently. On the other hand, and this is another fascinating thing, is that Siberian tigers and Bengal tigers mimic different sounds. Siberian tigers mimic the sounds of species that they live with, which means it's a learned behavior. And it's, imagine the level of intelligence it takes to use mimicry of voice to in an offensive way in a hunting expedition, which is the only other animal that is known to use this are humans, which use predator calls to call in predators and kill them, or mating calls to call in elks and stuff. So definitely tigers are really intelligent when it comes to killing other animals. On the other hand, bears are in general very problem solving, quick thinking animals. So their intelligences are quite different into different segments, but if we have to give one an edge, we cannot. Again, in a fight, both are important. It is important to figure out how to kill an animal. At the same time, it's important to be quick on your feet, quick on your thinking. And so that's why I think it's another tie. So let's look at the final stats matchup. So the tigers have advantage in strength, agility, weaponry, skills, and experience. On the other hand, the bear has advantage in size, defense, and stamina, and they both are tied in intelligence and intimidation. So now I will run a simulation of one of the situations which can happen, which is more likely to happen when these two animals come face to face. You can see here in the forest clearing, an adult male tiger comes face to face with an adult male brown bear. After sizing each other, both use their intimidating calls to scare off the other. Unfortunately, neither of them are backing down. So they both charge at each other and start fighting. There's roars. They're both slashing at each other with their claws, and they're trying to bite each other. The bear rears up occasionally to intimidate the tiger. The tiger leaps on the bear. They're both slashing at each other while the bear's paws are striking against the tiger, pushing it aside. The tiger's claws are slashing on the bear's face, leaving deep, bleedy wounds and even injuring an eye. And eventually one of the bear's paws are close to the tiger, so the tiger decides to move to the side. And the bear, once the tiger moves to the side, and since the bear is on 2 legs right now, it tries to get on 4 legs to chase the tiger. And this was quite the deadly mistake, because the tiger is extremely agile and leapt right on top of the bear and grabbed onto the bear by the neck. And once in this position, the bear is quite vulnerable, because you can see here with the red I have highlighted the area in which the bear can strike with its arms and with its jaws, obviously, like by charging forward. But because the tiger is positioned in a side way and using its massive claws, like hook-like claws, the tiger has essentially anchored itself to the side of the bear, due to which the bear is now unable to reach the tiger in any shape or form. Obviously the bear will try to move around, but because the tiger is anchored with the bear, the tiger also moves around and the relative position doesn't change, allowing the tiger a secure grip on the neck of the bear. And with the quick twist, the bear's neck is snapped. And once the neck is snapped, the bear falls down to the ground and dies. The victorious tiger roars on the corpse of its victim. So the final verdict is that tigers will win in most fights, because they have advantage in strength, agility, weaponry, skill, and experience. Now, granted, this won't be a landslide victory, an easy victory, because bears still have an advantage in size, defenses, and stamina. So it won't be an easy fight, and I'm not saying there will absolutely be no cases where the tiger loses. Yes, there will be cases where the tiger loses, specifically if the tiger fails to land a choke, or essentially a quick bite to the neck or the throat of the bear. Now, the problem is, because the bear is so sluggish, the bear simply doesn't have enough agility to dodge these bites. So in the event that the bear continuously dodges these attempts of the tiger to bite down onto the neck or the throat of the bear, eventually the tiger will tire out, and the bear's superior stamina will allow the bear to chase after the tiger and subdue it, either make the animal run away or maybe get into a wrestling match with the exhausted tiger. But for the most part, what is more likely to happen is the tiger will leap on the bear, land the choke either on the throat. If it's a choke, then it's on the throat, and if it's a bite to the neck, then it's a bite to the neck, I guess. I call them landing the choke. Land the choke and snap the neck or crush the windpipe, killing the bear. So 75% of the cases the tigers will win, 25% of the cases the bears will win. And that's my final conclusion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and let me know if there are other versus battles which I should do. I would really like to do the less popular ones, not these popular ones, because they already get enough attention. I want to do some less popular ones, so let me know in the comments as well. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure to watch the other videos. You will learn quite a bit, I believe. And as always,